Slurpty-derp, my G's. I've got a lovely little coffee down from the local cafe here in Kuala Lumpur. It's really, really nice, this one. So, I had a great comment from a subscriber recently that I thought would be a good video to address. And when I read this, I had to rejoice. It was wonderful to read because shout out to DJ Overturned, who says, opinion on this. EQ the low mids out so you get rid of the mud rule that's been circulating lately. Every time I try it, my stuff sounds too plasticky. Yeah, no wonder. And weak. But it seems to work for everyone, does it? Yeah, when I read that this rule is circulating lately again, I really had to get down and praise the Lord, because just knowing that this information is still circulating around keeps me in a job, keeps me in work, keeps clothes on my back, and keeps money in my bank account so I can buy food. So I was very, very grateful to read this, so thank you. So all jokes aside, I'm going to explain why this is, what you need to do is wherever you heard that advice, you first need to Control-Alt-Delete that on your computer browser. Then you need to go up into your brain and you need to Control-Alt-Delete that thought as well. All right, so how I can explain this the most easily so that you can move forward without falling into some kind of traps like music production myths. Because remember, I've been on the front lines of the music production myth world for 10 years. I've been deep in the trenches, and I've gone through all of those, those spiritual battles, and I can attest that nothing is that serious, really. It's not that complicated. So there's a lot of things that, like dogma and just made up rules that really confuse you, and they don't really make sense. So, is there a problem in the low-mid area in some tracks where there is mud? Absolutely, absolutely. But in terms of this notion that you have to remove a certain frequency so that there's no mud, that's a complete lie. Because you can have frequencies across the whole spectrum. It's absolutely fine. You can have frequencies everywhere. The problem is that you might get a muddy sound in the low mids for a variety of reasons, but it's not because it's an area that causes mud. Like, that notion is bullshit, completely bullshit. It's usually because it's an area that's easy to muddy up via something that you're doing wrong. And the two things that it most likely would be is that the sound that you've got in there is by nature a muddy sound. Like, for example, a lot of the time, like, we can talk about this in terms of bass, because that's kind of going to be the main culprit usually, So if we talk about the low mids, let's think about maybe like 100 hertz to 300 hertz or something like that, right? Roughly. So obviously your bass is going to be there, but you can absolutely have like bass frequencies, right the way from the sub all the way through, all the way up to the top. Like, it can cover the whole range. The problem is if your bass sound, for example, is not clear, it doesn't have clarity or definition in itself as a sound. That's why it's going to be muddy. It's because it's lacking clarity and definition as a sound in itself. It's usually either that the actual sound itself is muddy and needs you need to have created a cleaner sound or used a cleaner sound. And I'll talk about that in a moment, why that could be. Or the other issue is that you've just got too many overlapping layers, and you've got too many frequency conflicts. So you can't have frequency conflicts in that area of the spectrum. So if you've got like more than one bass at the same time in that area, that's instant mud, and that's a no-go. If you've got like if you haven't sidechained your kick efficiently with the bass, you've got instant mud due to the conflict there. If your snare's got loads of rumble in it in the low end that doesn't need to be there, and then you just kind of left it in, and you've got the bass at the same time, that's going to cause you some instant mud because of the conflict. So any two sounds, no matter what they are, if they're conflicting in that area, will cause you an issue. So you have to sidechain everything properly with multi-band sidechaining, or compose things so they don't overlap. And you can only really have one sound in the spectrum at a time, you know, to a degree. Otherwise, yeah, too much of a conflict is going to cause mud. So it's going to be either the conflicting of two sounds that's causing your mud, or it's going to be the nature of the sounds themselves that are too muddy. Yeah. So if we talk about, just to keep this tutorial short, bass, for example, you can what I like to do often in bass sound design is use certain filters that do scoop out some of that mud area, right? But it's not because the area is a mud area that needs to have stuff taken down. It's because I'm trying to give the bass like a shape in the low mids. So if the whole bass is like completely full in the low mids, like everywhere, then it just will be very overwhelming for your headroom. And so it's better to have a bass that has like a bit of a shape to it, okay? And this is not because you have to remove a muddy area. It's just because a bass that is a bit more defined, like it has a certain like movement in the low mids, like a nice movement, and like an expression that's like not just completely flat, but it has like I mentioned, like a shape in there somewhere. That makes the bass sound more defined and have more clarity, yeah. And you could also, you know, that's one way that you can make the bass more defined, so it's less muddy in a sense. But also a bass could be perceived as muddy, for example, if you've like overdone the chorus, or you've overused stereo effects, or you've just distorted it too much. Like, many things could cause the sound in itself to become muddy. So you just have to be good at designing sounds and picking sounds that have high definition and high clarity. And if you're able to do that, then, like I mentioned, you can really fill up like any frequency range that you want. There's not this, you don't have to like, it's not a default thing that you have to take out the mud somewhere, okay? It's just that your sound lacks clarity and definition because of its nature, or you've got conflicts going on in your track. Those are the two main things, okay? But it's a bad mindset to have that by default you need to remove the mud, because what you'll often do is you'll actually like weaken your sound quite a lot, and more often than not you'll be taking out those frequencies which are really the good expressive parts of the sound, you know? So yeah, focus on clarity and definition of each individual sound, and remember that if you compose well, you can leave all the content in on those kind of sounds, you know? If you're good at composing so there's not overlaps, and you're good at mixing any conflicts using multi-band sidechaining or those kind of tools, then you can keep sounds very, very full in the low mids, and you won't have to make them sound like plasticky or weak because of this like notion that you have to EQ out the mud, which doesn't really, yeah, it's too vague of a concept, because you have to, it's a case by case thing, you know? It's a case by case thing for each sound. All right, so I hope that was helpful for some of you guys, and yeah, keep the questions coming. I'll keep the content rolling. More from me very soon. Much love.